Bueno, aparte de dar la bienvenida y agradeceros estar aquí en este seminario, seminario Peyover que se inicia hoy, agradecer también a todos los invitados e invitadas que han venido desde muy lejos y aceptaron enseguida participar de este seminario, y agradecer también a su presencia y la dirección del seminario a Jaime Vindel y a Marcelo Expósito, que son dos de las personas que forman parte del claustro del PEI, del Programa de Estudios Independientes del MACBA, específicamente del área o de la línea denominada Imaginación, política y materialismo cultural. Este seminario, de alguna manera, entronca con otros que ya hemos realizado aquí en el PEI, del que ellos os comentarán. Y solamente apuntar que este seminario no se inicia hoy, sino que se inició hace 2 días, ¿no? Eso fue PEI cerrado, con 2 seminarios simultáneos en los que Cristina Keaer y María Eugenia Rodríguez Palop abordaron 2 de los temas que se van a debatir o que se van a abordar en estos días, ¿no? Por una parte, la cuestión de los comunes, en el caso de María Eugenia Rodríguez Palop, y por otro, en el caso de Cristina Keaer, la cuestión de los productivismos en la Rusia de hace un siglo, ¿no? O ya de hace un siglo y un año, y su posible relectura hoy. Agradecer muchísimo a Marcelo y a Jaime por todo el trabajo que han puesto en este seminario, y no solo en él, sino en todo el PEI, y nada, daros la bienvenida a todos.
Gracias, Pablo. Sí, se oye. Bueno, pues buenos días a todos, buenos días a todas y bienvenidas a este seminario Peyover, que forma parte, como ya ha introducido Pablo, de la colaboración que Jaime Vindel, compañero a mi izquierda, y yo estamos realizando para el Programa de Estudios Independientes del MACBA. Se trata, claro, como sabéis, de un seminario abierto que se relaciona, por lo tanto, con otros seminarios que están teniendo lugar en el marco del programa de estudios, como es el caso de petróleo, el seminario abierto que fue coordinado en mayo del año pasado por Emilio Santiago Muñoz, que también es profesor del claustro del programa de estudios. Fue un seminario que planteó un debate sobre la crisis ecosocial, contando con nombres, como también sabéis, muy destacados como Yayo Herrero, Miren Echezarreta, Vicente Navarro, Jorge Rietzmann o Hugo Bardi. En primer lugar, por supuesto, queremos dar las gracias al conjunto del claustro de profesores y de profesoras del programa de estudios, a su coordinador y jefe de programas públicos del MACBA, Pablo Martínez, que está realizando una tarea fabulosa en este museo, a Miriam Rubio y a Yolanda Nicolás, que llevan realizando un trabajo eficacísimo de producción en el MACBA desde hace muchos años y que se han aplicado especialmente a la hora de facilitar la colaboración de Jaime y mía con este programa de estudios en el curso actual. Queremos también agradecer, por supuesto, a los estudiantes y a las estudiantes del programa de estudios, porque son, de hecho, bueno, son el corazón, son la esencia del programa y son un estímulo permanente. Por supuesto, en último lugar, hay que agradecer a Ferran Barenblit por cómo está dirigiendo de manera muy fructífera este museo desde que comenzó su mandato. Muchas gracias también, Ferran, por tu trabajo y por acogernos, por albergarnos a todos y a todas. Y tenemos que agradecer naturalmente a todos y a todas por vuestra presencia hoy también al comienzo de este seminario, que va a durar 2 jornadas completas. Los vientos del este son vientos gélidos, son vientos secos, se originan en tierras frías y arrasan hacia el oeste, presagiando tormentas y tiempos turbulentos. Los vientos del este figuran en las mitologías occidentales desde tiempos remotos, representados muchas veces como vientos destructivos que alteran el clima ordinario, que generan inquietud con el aviso de su llegada. En la mitología griega, entre los anemoi o dioses del viento, el viento del este está encarnado en la figura de Euros o Euro, de quien paradójicamente se consideraba que portaba calor, aunque también era un dios tormentoso, o cuando menos un dios lluvioso. Solía ser representado por un joven que lleva en sus manos una vasija volcada derramando agua. Este imaginario de un viento que presagia un castigo o una perturbación tiene un papel importante en el Éxodo, cuando Dios ordena a Moisés que estire su vara para recoger con ella un viento del este, que trajo consigo la 8ª plaga de Egipto, la plaga de langostas que devastó cultivos, árboles y plantas. Bert, el desollinador, canta: viento del este y niebla gris anuncian que viene lo que ha de venir. Presagia así Bert la llegada de Mary Poppins, flotando desde el cielo entre las nubes. Y en casos como estos, los vientos del este portan justicia y regeneración. En contraste, en los últimos años de su vida, un Sherlock Holmes envejecido y melancólico se despidió de su asistente Watson, advirtiéndole sombrío y pesimista: Watson, se aproxima un viento del este. En esa novela, la acción se sitúa en los prolegómenos de la Primera Guerra Mundial, en 1914, pero fue publicada en realidad en 1917, el año de la Revolución Soviética. En cualquiera de los casos, los vientos del este provocan ancestralmente tiempos de renovación vertiginosa, catalizados por lo general por alguna figura mítica que perturba el orden conocido. En el imaginario de la izquierda, el viento del este ha constituido durante décadas una de las más poderosas metáforas de la onda expansiva de la Revolución de Octubre. Cuando Jean-Luc Godard quedó tocado por mayo del 68, mayo del que ahora se cumplen 50 años, dejó por un tiempo de hacer cine bajo su nombre propio para conformar un colectivo que adoptó el nombre dinámico y futurista de uno de los grandes revolucionarios en el cine de la Unión Soviética, Dziga Vertov. El cuarto film del grupo Dziga Vertov, que está datado en 1970, tiene por título Viento del Este y consiste en un feroz desmantelamiento izquierdista de los arquetipos vaqueros del cine de Hollywood. Rafael Alberti escribió en 1933, durante la República Española, unos poquitos años antes del estallido de la Guerra Civil Española, un poema que tenía por título Un fantasma recorre Europa. Y las viejas familias cierran las ventanas, afianzan las puertas, y el padre corre a oscuras a los bancos, y el pulso se le para en la bolsa, y sueña por las noches con hogueras, con ganados ardiendo. Los campesinos pasan pisando nuestra sangre. ¿Qué es esto?, gritan. Cerremos pronto las fronteras. Vedlo avanzar deprisa en el viento del este, de las estepas rojas del hambre, que su voz no la oigan los obreros, que su silbido no penetre en las fábricas, que no divisen su voz alzada los hombres de los campos. Detenedlo, porque salta a los mares, recorriendo toda la geografía, porque se esconde en las bodegas de los barcos y habla a los fogoneros, y los saca tiznados a cubierta, y hace que el odio y la miseria se subleven, y se levanten las tripulaciones. Pero nosotros, aunque lo quieran detener, nosotros lo seguimos, y lo hacemos descender del viento este que lo trae. Le preguntamos por las estepas rojas de la paz y del triunfo, lo sentamos a la mesa del campesino pobre, presentándolo al dueño de la fábrica, haciéndolo presidir las huelgas y las manifestaciones, hablar con los soldados y con los marineros, lo hacemos ver en las oficinas a los pequeños empleados y alzar el puño a gritos en los parlamentos del oro y de la sangre. Un fantasma recorre Europa, un fantasma recorre el mundo, nosotros lo llamamos camarada. La figura mítica, innombrada en este poema, que los obreros y los campesinos hacen descender del viento del este que lo trae, es evidentemente el mismo Lenin, para quien el Lissitzky diseñó en 1919 una tribuna que lo representaba alzado en las alturas, inclinado del este al oeste, elevado hacia las nubes por una torre de metal constructivista y respaldado por una gran pantalla de proyección cinematográfica. La revolución como un vuelco repentino, el líder revolucionario como figura ancestral y mesiánica. Primera Guerra Mundial en 1914 y Revolución de Octubre en 1917, todas las historiografías serias del siglo pasado toman este doble estallido como punto de inflexión en el que arranca el siglo XX. sea para denominarlo el siglo corto, como Eric Hobsbawm, o el siglo largo, como Gianni Arrighi, resulta imposible entender y ni tan siquiera pensar el siglo XX sin la revolución bolchevique. La revolución de 1917 partió el mundo y el tiempo en dos, ha escrito hace poco Álvaro García Linera a propósito del centenario con el que dialoga este seminario. Tampoco García Linera ha evitado caer en la tentación de utilizar para describir esa revolución una imagen epifánica, tiempos salvajes, pero también la ha descrito con una imagen menos estrepitosa, que a nosotros quizá nos interesa mucho más a la hora de enfrentarnos hoy día al mito de octubre. La revolución es la llegada de un tiempo plebeyo.
Bien, los conceptos de revolución y comunismo quedaron asociados en el siglo XX a partir de la Revolución de Octubre, de la que se acaba de cumplir, como decía hace un momento Marcelo, el centenario. Ese acontecimiento marcó a fuego toda una época atravesada por múltiples tensiones y proyectos económicos, sociales, políticos y culturales de diferente signo. Estos se hicieron cargo de la nueva coyuntura histórica abierta por la irrupción bolchevique para crecer al calor de la misma o para confrontarse con ella como enemigos irreconciliables. En el largo estrépito provocado por la caída del muro de Berlín en 1989 y el desmantelamiento de la URSS y su entorno geopolítico, continuó creciendo la hegemonía neoliberal, con su aniquilamiento de la imaginación utópica. Con todo, en el paisaje postsoviético del cambio de siglo, no dejaron de surgir destellos de resistencia con ecos globales, que mostraban una relación incómoda con la memoria y el significado histórico de la Unión Soviética. Desde la irrupción zapatista de 1994 hasta el ciclo de ocupaciones de plazas de 2011, pasando por el movimiento contra la globalización neoliberal. Esas promesas de reconstrucción de una nueva imaginación política fueron a menudo episódicas, fragmentarias, acontecimentales, sin capacidad de sedimentación institucional ni deseo de consistencia organizacional. Su emergencia se solapó en el tiempo con el continuado y devastador ataque del neoliberalismo a las estructuras de los pactos constitucionales de posguerra, que acabaron de estallar con la crisis financiera de 2008. Hoy caminamos sobre las ruinas ecosociales que ha dejado aquel corto siglo XX, relacionándonos de una manera inevitablemente ambivalente con sus instituciones heredadas. Somos conscientes de que se encuentran agrietadas por una profunda crisis de representación, consecuencia de haber sido un instrumento de varias décadas de desposesión de las mayorías sociales, pero al mismo tiempo necesitamos recuperarlas tácticamente con dos propósitos específicos. Por un lado, la construcción de una barricada democrática contra el ascenso de las diferentes versiones de la nueva extrema derecha. Por otro, con el objeto de impulsar políticas redistributivas frente al fascismo de los mercados financieros. Habitando ese paisaje, ¿tiene sentido reconsiderar la palabra comunismo? Es lo que nos queremos preguntar en este seminario. Y si sirve de algún provecho, ¿cuál sería la relación actual entre comunismo y revolución? Este seminario surge con el deseo de retornar sobre la memoria de 1917 con una pretensión doble. Por una parte, incidir en la reconstrucción crítica de aquel acontecimiento, considerándolo desde la óptica de las historias del movimiento obrero, la izquierda revolucionaria y la vanguardia artística experimental. Por otra, enfocarlo a través de una lente más amplia que dirima su sentido en el desarrollo de la modernidad y nos aporte pistas sobre el porvenir de lo común. Durante los últimos años se han sucedido toda una serie de publicaciones sobre la Revolución Rusa que abarcan diversos aspectos de esta. Por mencionar tan solo algunos, podríamos enumerar los siguientes. La reconstrucción narrativa del proceso histórico que explica su emergencia y desarrollo político concretos. El análisis de la cuestión democrática en la relación entre los soviets, el partido bolchevique, luego comunista, y la constitución del Estado obrero. El debate sobre la consolidación estalinista del régimen comunista como contrarrevolución o, por el contrario, como una suerte de revolución desde arriba, por emplear los términos que utiliza Enzo Traverso, que también estuvo presente en un seminario anterior del Programa de Estudios Independientes. La crítica también de la ambivalencia de la relación entre el proyecto soviético y la economía política capitalista, que es una cuestión en la que entrará esta tarde Amsel Japp. Y finalmente, las aportaciones historiográficas relativas al papel geopolítico de la URSS en la contención y derrota del fascismo, los procesos de descolonización del llamado Tercer Mundo o el ascenso y caída de los estados keynesianos. Retomando esos hilos y algunos otros, este seminario trata de responder a un conjunto de dilemas políticos del presente. Nuestra pretensión es que ese ejercicio rehuya dos inercias concretas. Por un lado, recaer en una nostalgia izquierdista que queda atrapada en el pasado en lugar de liberarlo políticamente en el presente. Por otro, la inclinación edípica de matar al padre, perdiendo por el camino los trazos emancipadores de la canción comunista. En la primera deriva redundan con frecuencia las reediciones más o menos ortodoxas del leninismo estatista. La segunda trayectoria, por su parte, ha impulsado la fuga hacia la producción de subjetividad de las prácticas culturales radicales. La escisión entre macro y micropolítica, tan recurrente en los discursos artísticos de las últimas décadas, parece responder a esta bifurcación histórica, con sus correspondientes declinaciones identitarias. Lo que en ellas se escamotea a la teoría y a la praxis comunistas motiva las diferentes conferencias que componen este seminario. Su configuración responde a una constelación de conceptos que abordarán en las sucesivas conferencias un abanico de preguntas que, proyectándose desde 1917, podemos seguir considerando las nuestras. Las podríamos sintetizar en 9 puntos, a modo de preludio de las intervenciones que vamos a escuchar durante estas 2 jornadas. En primer lugar, ¿podemos redefinir las políticas de los afectos desde una reivindicación de la solidaridad que conjugue macro y micropolítica, política y cultura? ¿Qué formas de organización práctica de la vida social pueden hoy tomar el testigo de lo que en origen aglutinó la idea de partido? En segundo lugar, ¿cuál es la actualidad del proyecto artístico productivista que acompañó, no sin fricciones, la sedimentación institucional de la Revolución Soviética? ¿Qué desvíos estético-políticos permanecen en él inexplorados para la construcción de un deseo comunista? En tercer lugar, ¿cuál fue el papel histórico de octubre en la lógica de la modernización? ¿Fueron el marxismo del movimiento obrero, por emplear un término de Robert Kurz, y su parteaguas revolucionario soviético fenómenos funcionales o, por el contrario, conflictivos respecto al despliegue moderno de la forma-valor? En cuarto lugar, ¿qué papel cumplió la revolución en el giro cultural subjetivo del marxismo occidental posterior a Gramsci? ¿Cómo valoramos esa herencia desde una posición materialista que reconozca los condicionantes económicos, tecnológicos, culturales e incluso biológicos que constituyen la realidad social? En quinto lugar, ¿cómo podemos pensar, a partir de la desposesión resultante de los procesos de acumulación capitalistas, la constitución de un nuevo paradigma de lo común? ¿Qué formas de la utopía y de la democracia por venir podemos imaginar asociadas a él? En sexto lugar, ¿qué aportaciones decisivas plantea el ecofeminismo a la hora de repensar los vínculos entre trabajo y cuidados? ¿De qué manera podría orientar la apertura de un metabolismo ecosocial sostenible, basado en la tríada redistribución, reconocimiento, emancipación, por emplear en este caso los términos de Nancy Fraser? En séptimo lugar, ¿qué papel juega el municipalismo en la concreción institucional de proyectos constituyentes? ¿Cuáles son sus potencialidades y límites como laboratorio de experimentación de nuevas formas de relación entre la política institucional, los movimientos sociales y el conjunto de la sociedad civil? En octavo lugar, ¿de qué manera se reconfigura hoy el vínculo entre deuda y guerra que atraviesa el decurso de la modernidad desde al menos la Primera Guerra Mundial? ¿Cómo idear un nuevo antagonismo social que combata la deuda como forma de guerra neocolonial y como producción neoliberal de subjetivación? Y finalmente, un noveno punto. ¿Qué imagen dialéctica y qué genealogía de la emancipación podemos recomponer al retornar sobre la memoria de octubre? ¿Qué deseos pueden politizar el colapso psíquico contemporáneo, prefigurando la expresión de comunismos futuros? Y eso sería todo. Y bueno, pues dejamos ya paso a la primera de las conferencias de Jodi Dean.
I'm very happy to be here. This is my first time in Barcelona, so thanks so much to the organizers and to MACBA for giving me this chance. It's great to be in this part of this exciting seminar. It's also great to see this wonderful city, and also particular thanks to Yolanda, who did all of the work of figuring out transportation and accommodations. I'll probably only get to 3 theses. But.
Of the Democratic Party here tonight, Mr. Bernie Sanders. There he is. Bernie, you look like $1 million. Or to put it in terms you'll understand, you look like 37,000 donations of $27 each. A lot of folks have been surprised by the Bernie phenomenon, especially his appeal to young people, but not me. I get it. Just recently, a young person came up to me and said she was sick of politicians standing in the way of her dreams. As if we were actually going to let Malia go to Burning Man this year. Was not going to happen. Bernie might have let her go. Not us. I am hurt, though, Bernie, that you've been distancing yourself a little from me. I mean, that's just not something that you do to your comrade.
I'm interested in what might account for this strange appearance of the comrade in a speech of an American president. On the one hand, it might seem like red baiting, right? It might seem like Obama's thinly veiled reminder that Sanders was a self-identified socialist and thus politically unacceptable. But the reminder could have also been not red baiting, but just highlighting the fact that Sanders wasn't really a member of the Democratic Party, and so wasn't Obama's party comrade at all. Sanders was running for the Democratic nomination, but he wasn't a Democrat. An additional layer of the joke appears when we recall the U.S. right's attacks on Obama as himself a socialist or communist. For 8 years, the right excoriated Obama as the most radical left-wing president the U.S. has ever had. Calling out Comrade Obama, it associated Obama with Lenin and Stalin, Che and Mao. This right-wing context makes sense of the unexpected appearance of Comrade in the words of a U.S. president, when we recognize that the joke points not to Sanders as a comrade, but to Obama as a comrade. Obama is referring to himself as Sanders' comrade, to himself as someone who shares with Sanders a common political horizon, the emancipatory egalitarian communist horizon denoted by the term comrade. If they're on the same side, if Obama is Sanders' comrade, then Obama should have been able to expect a little solidarity. The term comrade points to a relation, a set of expectations for action. It doesn't name an identity. It highlights the sameness of those who share a politics, a common horizon of political action. If you are a comrade, you don't publicly distance yourself, even a little bit, from your party. Comradeship binds action, and in this binding, works to direct action toward a certain future. For communists, this is the egalitarian future of a society emancipated from the determinations of capitalist production and reorganized according to the free association, common benefit, and collective decisions of the producers. So today what I'm going to do is present 3 theses on the comrade. before I do that, I'm going to set out some present tendencies that I think the comrade can help us out of. Two opposed tendencies dominate contemporary left theory and activism: survivors and systems. The first inhabits social media, academic environments, and some activist networks. It is voiced through intense attachment to identity and appeals to intersectionality. The second, systems, predominates in more aesthetic and conceptual venues as a post-humanist concern with geology, extinction, algorithms, hyperobjects, biosystems, and planetary exhaustion. So on the one side, we have survivors, those with nothing left to cling to but their identities, often identities forged through struggles to survive and attached to the pain and trauma of these struggles. On the other hand, we have systems, processes operating at a scale so vast, so complex, that we can scarcely conceive them, let alone affect them. These two tendencies correspond to neoliberal capitalism's dismantling of social institutions, to the intensification of capitalism via networked, personalized digital media and informatization, or what I call communicative capitalism. So today, more and more people experience more and more economic uncertainty, insecurity, and instability. Jobs are harder to find, easier to lose. Most people can't count on long-term employment or expect, particularly in the US, that benefits like health insurance and retirement packages will be part of our compensation. Our work is more precarious: flex work, temp work, contract work, ideologically garnished as entrepreneurial. Unions are smaller and weaker. Schools and universities face cuts to budgets and faculty, additions of administrators and students, more debt, less respect. Pummeled by competition, debt, and the general dismantling of the remnants of public and infrastructural supports, families crumble. Neoliberal ideology glosses the situation as one where individuals have more choice, more opportunity to exercise personal responsibility. The German legal philosopher and Nazi Carl Schmitt famously characterized liberalism as replacing politics with ethics and economics. Correlatively, we should note the displacement of politics specific to neoliberalism. There is individualized self-cultivation, self-management, self-reliance, self-absorption, and at the same time, impersonal determining processes, circuits, and systems. We have responsible individuals, right? Individuals who are responsibilized, treated as loci of autonomous choices and decisions, and we have individuals encountering situations that are utterly determining and outside their control. Instead of ethics and economics, neoliberalism's displacement of politics manifests in the opposition between survivors and systems. The former struggle to persist in conditions of unlivability rather than to seize and transform these conditions. The latter are systems and hyper-objects determining us, often aesthetic objects or objects of a future aesthetics, something to view and diagram and predict and perhaps even mourn, but not to affect. Survivors experience their vulnerability. Some even come to cherish it, to derive their sense of themselves from their survival against all that is stacked against them. The sociologist Jennifer Silva interviewed a number of working class adults in Massachusetts and Virginia. Many emphasized their self-reliance. They thought that other people were likely to continue to fail or betray them, so to survive, they could only count on themselves. Some of the young adults she interviewed described struggles with illness, battles with addiction, the challenges of overcoming dysfunctional families and abusive relationships. So for them, the fight to survive is a key feature of an identity imagined as dignified and heroic because it has to produce itself by itself. Accounts of systems are typically devoid of survivors. Human lives don't matter. The presumption that they matter is taken to be an epistemological failure or an ontological crime in need of remedy. Bacteria and rocks, planetary or even galactic processes are what need to be taken into account, we're told, brought into to redirect thought away from anthropocentric hubris. When people appear, they are part of the problem, a planetary excess that needs to be curtailed, destructive species run amok, the glitch of life. So this opposition between survivors and systems gives us a left devoid of politics. Both tendencies render political struggle, the divisive struggle over common conditions on behalf of a common project and future, they render that unintelligible. In the place of politics, we have the fragmenting assertion of particularity, of unique survival, and the obsession with the encroaching, unavoidable impossibility of survival. Politics is effaced in the impasse of individualized survivability under conditions of generalized non-survival, extinction. Now, however strong these two survivor and system tendencies may be, I think that our present setting still provides some openings for politics, right? Some other paths, some other options. I'll list 4. First, communicative capitalism is marked by the power of number, of many. Capitalist and state power both emphasize big data and the knowledge generated by finding correlations in enormous data sets. Social media is driven by the power of number. How many friends, followers, how many shares and retweets. On the streets and in the movements, we see further emphasis on number, the many rioting, demonstrating, occupying, blockading. So we've got another sense of another possible path with this power of number. Second, identity is no longer able to ground a left politics uttered in its name. No political conclusions follow from the assertion of a specific identity. Attributions of identity are immediately complicated, critiqued, rejected. Third, because of the astronomical increase in demands on our attention that circulate in communicative capitalism, a series of communicative shortcuts have emerged. Hashtags, memes, emojis, reaction GIFs, as well as linguistic patterns optimized for search engines. I'm thinking of lists, questions, different kinds of indicators, words that are inserted for search engines, various hooks and lures. Like in English, one of the prominent awful websites like this is BuzzFeed. I don't know if people are familiar with BuzzFeed. And they have, all of their articles have the kind of same things, like a question, or it might be like a picture, like he just came home from 3 years in Iraq. What did his dog do? And then you're like, well, what did the dog do? And so you start looking. So all of them have this very kind of common pattern, common feature. These shortcuts then point to the prominence of generic markers, common images and symbols that facilitate communicative flow that keep circulation liquid. If we had to read, much less think about everything we shared online, our social media networks would slow down, they'd clog up. The generic serves increasingly as a container for multiplicities of incommunicable contents. Fourth, the movements themselves have come up against the limits of horizontality, individuality, and rhetorics of allyship that presuppose fixed identities and interests. The response has been renewed enthusiasm for the politics of parties, of stronger organizations, renewed interest in the question of the party form, renewed interest on how to organize the many. So cutting through and across the impasse of survivor and system is thus a new turn toward arrangements of the many and institutions of the common. So it's against this background, then, that I want to talk about the comrade. And the initial supposition or claim is that the comrade figures a political relation that shifts us away from preoccupations with survivors and systems, away from unique particularity and the impossibility of politics, and toward the sameness of those fighting on the same side. So my first thesis, then, is that comrade names a relation characterized by sameness, equality, and solidarity. For communist, this sameness, equality, and solidarity it's utopian, but it cuts through the determinations of capitalist society. Now, in the history of political ideas, there are multiple figures for political relations. For centuries, political theorists have tried to explain power and its exercise, to explain the duties and obligations, the virtues and attributes that are part of power in terms of very specific political figures. Right? One of the most famous is Machiavelli's Prince, but he wasn't the only person to write about princes. And in the history of political ideas, there are countless treatises on kings and monarchs and tyrants. Political theorists have investigated the citizen and the foreigner, the neighbor and the stranger, lord and vassal, friend and enemy. The inquiries extend into the household, master and slave, husband and wife, parent and child, sister and brother. They include the workplace, schoolmaster and pupil, bourgeois and proletarian. Yet, with all of these different figurations of politics and inquiries into into specific political figures in the history of political idea, there is no account of the comrade. The comrade does not appear. So why? Like, how come? In the US, this is probably easy because of the Cold War and hardcore anti-communism. But that would not explain why we don't see accounts of the comrade in socialist and communist work. Like nothing systematic. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. One is Alexandra Kollontai, and another is Maxim Gorky. So I'm going to talk about these. Neither is systematic or analytical, but they do give us an affective opening into the utopian promise of comradeship. In her writings on prostitution, sex, and the family from the early years of the Bolshevik Revolution, Kollontai presents comradeship and solidarity as sensibilities necessary for building a communist society. She associates comradeship with a feeling of belongingness, a relation among free and equal communist workers. She writes, in place of the individual and egoistic family, a great universal family of workers will develop, in which all the workers, men and women, will above all be comrades. Comrade points to a mode of belonging opposed to the isolation, hierarchy, and oppression of bourgeois forms of relation, particularly those in the family under capitalism. It's a mode characterized by equality, solidarity, and respect. Collectivity replaces egoism and self-assertion. And one element that's kind of neat here is that in Russian, the word comrade, tovarish, is gender neutral. So it replaces gender modes of address. Gorky has a short story from the early 20th century that's titled Comrade. The story, it's so over the top, I love it. The story testifies to the life-giving power of the word comrade. Gorky presents comrade as a word that, quote, had come to unite the whole world, to lift all men up the summits of liberty and bind with new ties, the strong ties of mutual respect, end quote. In the story, there's a city, and he depicts this city as dismal and tortured. It's a city of hostility, violence, humiliation, and rage. The weak always submit to the strong. But in the midst of this miserable suffering, one word rings out, comrade. And the people cease to be slaves. They refuse to submit. They become conscious of their strength. They recognize that they themselves are the force of life. In the story, when people say comrade, they change the world. Gorky's examples include the prostitute who feels a hand on her shoulder, and then she weeps with joy as she turns around and hears the word, comrade. With this word, she's interpolated not as a self-commodifying object to be enjoyed by another, but as an equal in the struggle against the conditions requiring commodification. His other examples are a beggar, a coachman, young combatants. For all, comrade shines like a star that guides them to the future. So, like Kollontai, Gorky associates the word comrade with freedom from servitude, with freedom from oppression, and with equality. Like her, he presents the comrade as opposed to capitalist egoisms, exploitation, hierarchy, competition, and misery. And, like Kollontai, Gorky links comradeship to a struggle for and vision of a future in which all will be comrades. Now, there are similarly romantic celebrations of the word comrade and comradeship in an American magazine that was published between 1901 and 1905, right? The Comrade. And it was an illustrated monthly targeted to ethically minded middle-class socialists. And it featured poems, short fiction, articles on industry, translations from European socialists, and autobiographical essays of the sort, How I Became a Socialist. Inspired in part by the poet Walt Whitman's manly love of comrades, the journal echoes Whitman's homoeroticism, homosociality, and celebratory queerness. Comrade relations are relations of a new type, relations that disrupt the confines of the family and heteropatriarchy. There's one of my favorite examples is a short story called The Slave of a Slave. The protagonist of that story is a tomboy, which is a slang English expression for usually for a young girl or a teenage girl who dresses like a boy. I mean, we don't say that anymore. We just say genderqueer or something. But they would say the old school term was tomboy. And so it's the protagonist is called a tomboy, and she tries to save a woman a very poor woman from her brutal husband. She fails. The poor woman stays with the husband. And then at the end of the story, the tomboy expresses gratitude that she herself will never be a woman. The Comrade also features poems that extol comrade and comradeship. There's a poem by George Herron called The Song of Tomorrow that dreams of comrade love that will fill the world. Another poem, The Love of Comrade, evokes comrade bees. Then there's another one where comrade is a prefix. Comrade Day, Comrade Home, Comrade March, Comrade Future, Comrade Stars. Russian constructivist Alexander Rodchenko expands the field of comradeship even further to include objects, comrade things. In 1925, he writes, "Our things in our hands must also be equals, also comrades." So these examples from these Bolsheviks and this magazine, The Comrade, link comradeship to a future characterized by equality and belonging, by a love and respect between equals, so great that it can't be contained in human relations, but spans to include insects and galaxies, bees and stars, and objects themselves. Comrade marks the division between the world of misery we have and the egalitarian communist world that will be. Just like in Russian revolutionary history and early 20th century Anglo-US Whitman socialism, so in contemporary Chinese does the term comrade, tongji, replace hierarchical and gendered designations of relation with an ideal of egalitarianism and utopianism. Tongji in contemporary Chinese, their word comrade, also means gay. According to Hong Wei Bao, tongji is intrinsically queer. Quote, it maps social relations in a new way, a way that opens the traditional family and kinship structure to relations and connections between strangers who share the same political views, and it transforms private intimacy into public intimacy, end quote. Bao's queer comrades resonate with readings of Whitman's ethos of comradeship, particularly in Whitman's Calamus poems. Erotic, comradely relations destabilize and overcome identitarian differences of locality, ethnicity, class and occupation, sex, race, and sexuality. So, Kollontai, Gorky, and their queer comrades inspire a first thesis on the comrade. Comrade is a generic and egalitarian, and for communists and socialists, utopian figure of political relation. The egalitarian dimension of comrade names a relation that cuts through the determinations of the present. This sense of comradeship, I think we skipped that one, there we go. This sense of comradeship comes through in the conclusion of The Wretched of the Earth, as Fanon appeals repeatedly to his readers as comrades. He writes, "Come, comrades, the European game is finally over. We must look for something else." And then the last line of the book, "For Europe, for ourselves, and for humanity, comrades, we must make a new start, develop a new way of thinking, and endeavor to create a new man," end quote. Comrade is a mode of address appropriate to this endeavor. It's egalitarian, generic, and abstract, and in the context of hierarchy, fragmentation, and oppression, it's utopian. Today, though, in a setting ever more nationalist and authoritarian, increasingly competitive, unequal, and immiserated, in a world of anthropocenic exhaustion, it's kind of hard to recapture the hope, futurity, and sense of shared struggle, part of an earlier revolutionary tradition. So what's comradeship for us? My wager is that a speculative, compositive account of comradeship, and honestly, speculative compositive is just my made-up name for like pulling a bunch of things together and distilling some common elements out of it. But I think that if we do this, if we distill these common elements out of uses of the term comrade as a mode of address, figure of belonging, and container for shared expectations, we can get a view of political relation necessary for the present. Comrades are more than survivors. They are those on the same side of a struggle for an emancipated, egalitarian world. Okay, so my second thesis. Is a way to answer the question, who is the comrade? And fortunately, Ernst Lubitsch's 1939 film Ninotchka takes us fairly far.
Well, this is a fine thing. Maybe we've missed him already.
How can we find somebody without knowing what he looks like?
That must be the one.
Yes, he looks like a comrade. Yeah.
Hitler. No, that's not him.
Positively not.
So what are we going to do now?
I don't know.
This is...
Terrible.
We must have missed him. Be the ones who send on.
I'm looking for Michael Simonovich Ironov.
I am Michael Simonovich Ironov.
I'm Nina Ivanovna Yakushova, envoy extraordinary, acting on the direct orders of Comrade Commissar Rosinin. Present with your colleagues.
Comrade Bulyanov.
Comrade.
Comrade Kropatsky.
Comrade.
What a charming idea for Moscow to surprise us with a lady, comrade.
If we had known, we would have greeted you with flowers.
Don't make an issue of my womanhood. We're here for work, all of us. Let's not waste any time. Shall we go?
Porter, here, please.
What do you want?
May I have your bags, madame?
Why?
He's a porter. He wants to carry them.
Why? Why should you carry other people's bags?
Well, that's my business, madame.
That's no business. That's social injustice.
That depends on the tip. Allow me, comrade.
No, thank you.
So, Ivanov, Bulyanov, and Kopalsky are at the train station to meet their comrade. Anyone could be their comrade, but not everyone. Some people are clearly not comrades. And Ivanov, Bulyanov, and Kopalsky can't figure out who their comrade is by looking at them. Identity has nothing to do with comradeship. That anyone but not everyone can be a comrade accentuates how comrade names a relation that's also a division. Comradeship is premised on inclusion and exclusion. Anyone but not everyone can be a comrade. It is not an infinitely open or flexible relation, but one premised on division and struggle. There's an enemy. But unlike Schmidt's classic account of the political in terms of the intensity of the antagonism between friend and enemy, comradeship doesn't concern the enemy. The fact of the enemy, of struggle, is the condition or setting of comradeship, but it does not determine the relation between comrades. Comrades are those on the same side of the division. With respect to this division, they are the same. Their sameness is that of those who are on the same side. To say comrade is to announce a belonging and the sameness that comes from being on the same side. Now, this sameness appears not only in relations between party members, but also in the military expression, comrade in arms. Comrade in arms designates those who fight on the same side against an enemy, another military, another set of comrades in arms. In his introduction to Wretched of the Earth, Jean-Paul Sartre writes that, quote, "Every comrade in arms represents the nation for every other comrade. Their brotherly love is the reverse side of the hatred they feel for you." Sartre's slide into the language of brotherhood brings out the ethnic and blood underpinnings of the nation that Schmidt's term friend occludes. Sartre alerts us then not only to comrade in arms, common relation to the enemy, right, the hated, the one to be killed. He alerts us not only to how comrade in arms are those on the same side, but also to the distinction between the comrade in arms and the comrade as a figure of belonging in the socialist and communist political tradition. The solidarity of comrades is not an inverted hatred. As we saw with Kollontai and Gorky, it's a response to fragmentation, hierarchy, isolation, and oppression. In their being on the same side, comrades confront and reject fragmentation, hierarchy, isolation, and oppression with an egalitarian promise of belonging. So, to reiterate, that anyone, but not everyone, can be a comrade highlights how comradeship designates a relation and a division, us and them, a political relation, but one that is not the same as the relation between friend and enemy, which is an absolute and exclusive state relation. Instead, there's a space of possibility. Anyone can be a comrade, but not everyone. And there is also a space of non-belonging. That you are not my comrade does not necessarily mean that you are my enemy. Now, I think we can gain some more clarity regarding the kind of emancipatory egalitarian kernel of the term comrade as it's part of the socialist and communist tradition once we start distinguishing comradeship from other relations. So first, the relation between comrades is not a kinship relation, right? It's not the same as the relation between brothers and sisters, parents, children, spouses, cousins. Your cousin might be your comrade, but when you add the word comrade, you're designating an additional element of the relation that the term cousin doesn't. The term comrade adds a political element, highlighting the fact that the cousins are on the same political side. They share a politics that exceeds their blood or kinship relation. Right? Kin disagree politically often. We can be related by blood without sharing a politics. And of course, the same holds for marriage. People can be spouses without being comrades, or they might be good comrades, but not so good spouses. Frida Kahlo famously said of Diego Rivera, whom she married twice, Diego is not anybody's husband and never will be, but he's a great comrade. And just as the relationship between comrades is not mediated by blood or marriage, so is it not mediated via inheritance. Rather than passing on property and privilege, comrade cuts against them, disrupting their hierarchies with the egalitarian insistence of those fighting together on the same side. The comrade is also not the neighbor. We may be part of the same locality. We might live in the same neighborhood or, be part of a similar tribe or community, but not be comrades. Comradeship does not designate a spatial relation or an obligation that extends from proximity or shared sociality. Third, the comrade is not the citizen. Citizenship is a relation mediated by the state. Comradeship exceeds the state. It does not take the state as its frame of reference. You can find comrades all over the world. And that magazine I showed earlier, that US one called The Comrade, it's interesting on this score as it collects letters and speeches and articles and writings from all sorts of European socialists. And this was before the US socialists were part of any kind of international. But nevertheless, they emphasized an affiliation with an international political movement and saw them as all being on the same side and so being comrades. The term comrade's rupture of citizen manifests further when we look at the way the state tends to be fearful of communists, thinking that communists may be traitors, right? That communists are those with loyalties to an organization other than the state. In the US during the Cold War, and still today in right-wing rhetoric, comrade was used in a derogatory way to accentuate the dangerous otherness of communists. Comrades may oppose other citizens. Comrade is also not the same as friend. We learn from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics that friendship is a direct relation between two people for the benefit of each other. It's a relationship anchored in the person for the benefit or excellence of the individual. Aristotle emphasizes that you can't have too many friends. In contrast, comradeship is broad, bees and stars. Someone previously unknown, now revealed as a comrade. It extends through intimate relations to stretch into relations with those we don't know personally at all. Anyone can be my comrade, whether they like me or not, whether they are like me or not. Now, this distinction between the comrade and the friend also points out the inhuman dimension of the comrade. Comradeship has nothing to do with the person or with personality in its specificity. It's generic. Comradeship abstracts from the specifics of individual lives. It abstracts from the uniqueness of lived experience and concerns the sameness that comes from being on the same side in a political struggle. In this sense, the comrade is liberated from the determinations of specificity. It's freed by the common political horizon. The US historian Ellen Schrecker makes this point in her account of anti-communism in the US. During the McCarthy period of communist persecution, there was a common assumption that all communists were the same. Communists were depicted as puppets, cogs. There's more Diego Rivera. There we go. Yeah, communists were depicted as puppets, cogs, automatons, robots, even slaves. In the words of one of the professional McCarthyite witnesses, people who became communists were no longer individuals but robots. They were chained in an intellectual and moral slavery that was far worse than any prison. The truth underlying the hyperbolic claims of anti-communists is the genericity, right, the genericness of the comrade, of comrade as a disciplined and disciplining relation that exceeds personal interests. Comradeship isn't personal, it's political. The other relations, kin, neighbor, citizen, friend, index degenerations of comradeship or errors that comrades make when they substantialize comradeship via race, ethnicity, nationality, and personality. We see this substantializing error in Italian and German uses of comrade, right? Because, literally, the actual literal translation in Italian and German is camarata, Italian, and camarad in German. And in both of those are fascist political names. This substantialization, though, is clearly a degeneration. The fascists cannot say anyone could be a comrade. So German leftists, and Italians as well, use different terms, right? In German, Genosse and Genossen becomes the actual translation. In Italian, compagno, compagna. Genosse comes from the old German word genots, which designates the shared enjoyment of something. Enjoying something with someone. So, back to my point, the emancipatory, egalitarian energy of comrade, its life-giving capacity and ability to map social relations in a new way, is a product of its genericity, its genericness. Anyone, but not everyone, can be a comrade. But when comradeship bleeds into nationality, ethnicity, or race, when it is mistaken for a relation supposed to benefit an individual, and when it is equated with relations mediated by the state, the cut of the generic is lost. Okay, the third thesis. Comradeship is not a relation of identity. As we saw in Nietzsche, an issue should not be made of the comrade's womanhood. Everybody's got work to do. Right? Comrade does not specify an identity. On the left, comrade is a term of address that attaches to proper names. Like in the movie, it was Comrade Yakushova. The proper name carries the individual identity. The term of address asserts a sameness. Comrade takes the place of sir, madam, citizen. It negates the specificity of a determined title, a title that inscribes differentiation and hierarchy, and it replaces that with a positive insistence on an equalizing sameness. My comrade Oksana Timofeyeva emphasizes that in comradeship, identity vanishes. And she gives the example of the masquerade used by Bolsheviks undercover. It could be anyone under that mustache. The historian Ellen Schrecker gives another example from a guy who was the attorney general under US President Eisenhower. His name was Brunel. And he was really suspicious of communists because, as he said, it's almost impossible to spot them since they don't use membership cards or written documents that identify them for what they are. In these examples, it's the generic comrade who appears, carried by an individual person, yes, but the one who appears is one of many. It could be anyone. Schrecker quotes an undercover informer, "Anyone can be a communist. Anyone can suddenly appear as a Communist Party member. Close friend, brother, employee, or even employer, leading citizen, trusted public servant." Bertolt Brecht's cantata, The Measures Taken, Die Maßnahme, similarly explores the antithetical relation between individual identity and the comrade. In the cantata, 4 agitators are on trial before a party central committee. It's called the control chorus in the play. And they're on trial for the murder of their young comrade. And as the play goes on, the agitators describe how they all went undercover in order to organize Chinese workers. And so each agitator had to efface his identity, quote, "to be nameless and without a past, empty pages on which the revolution may write its instructions," end quote. So each agitator, including the young comrade, had to agree that in order to fight communism, they had to be themselves no longer. So they put on Chinese masks and appeared as Chinese rather than as German and Russian. Repeatedly, though, the young comrade substitutes his judgment for that of the party, encouraging action before the time is right. He can see with his own 2 eyes that misery cannot wait. So he tears up the party writings, he tears off and up his mask, he substitutes his judgment for the parties, thereby exposing them all. So they have to flee the Chinese authorities and race to escape the city. But as they start racing away, they realize that since the young comrade has been exposed, since he is now identifiable, they have to kill him. And the young comrade agrees, so they shoot him, throw him into a lime pit that burns away all traces of him, and return to work. Comrades are multiple, fungible, replaceable. They are elements in collectives, even in collections. Right? In many Romance languages, comrade originates as a term for those who travel together, who share a room or enjoy something together. To be a comrade is to share a sameness with another with respect to where both are going. Now, I'm not going to do that one. Now, for anti-communists, the instrumentalism of comrade relations appears horrifying. Combined with the machinic impersonality and fungibility of comrades, the fact that relations between comrades are produced for an exterior purpose, the fact that they are means rather than ends in themselves is seen as morally objectionable. Now, I think that this anti-communist objection is a mistake. It fails to acknowledge the specificity of comradeship as a political relation, as a relation among those on the same side of a struggle. The anti-communist objection omits the way that political work focuses on ends beyond the individual, and so necessarily requires collective coordination. Moreover, the objection presumes a totalizing politics that subsumes all different relations, rather than recognizing an abstracted politics liberated or alienated from specific social relations. So for the anti-communists being cut, the comrade appears to subsume all relations, and what I'm arguing is that no, it's the opposite. It cuts through them. It's a new kind of relation that lets the other ones have their place, but it provides a new one. All right, let me just say a couple of words to conclude. So I've argued that comrade is a term of address, but it's more. It's a figure of political relation and a carrier of expectations for action. The expectations that those on the same side have of each other. As we saw from the Obama joke, you don't distance yourself from your comrades. We saw Kollontai affirm it. The primary virtue of comrades is solidarity. And in the fourth part, which I didn't talk to, this kind of solidarity and these expectations from those on the same side is demonstrated through reliable, practical actions. Broadly speaking, most comrades expect each other to engage in the struggles of the oppressed, organize for revolution, and maintain a certain unity of action. Absent expectations of solidarity, comrade is just an empty signifier. Okay, I'll stop there. I'll maybe keep that one. So do I stop, or should I get up or leave, or no? Leave now.
Coming to help.
Discussion, okay. Oh, should I put the headphones on? So, yeah.
Pues muchísimas gracias, Jodi.
I can't hear yet.
Is it working?
Sorry. Like this?
Hi. Take your time.
No, not yet. Just like
Does it work?
it works. I just don't know how to attach it. Maybe I should do the other ear. Okay, I've got it. Thanks.
Hi. I just have two questions. The first one is about the relation between the comrade and the non-comrade, and precisely when those two share the same political interests, even if one of the two may not consider him or herself like a comrade. And the second question is about camaraderie and national feelings, mostly because like two views could be considered here. One is that like the national concept being a kind of like a vertical one, both like the rich businessman and the worker love their nation, and that could be like in contradiction with like a horizontal camaraderie. Yet like in many countries, like the national discourse is used as kind of like a tool to bind people together. So I mean, how do these like two dimensions combine or articulate?
Sí. Antes, un segundito antes de responder, hemos ido muy rápido. Para no ser descortés, iba justamente a dar la bienvenida a Jodi, a dar las gracias por la apertura del seminario, porque no es fácil abrir un seminario en general y menos de estas características, así que muchas gracias por la valentía en abrir fuego. Y decir, para quien no lo sepa, que supongo que la mayoría lo sabéis, que hay dos libros de Jodi traducidos en castellano, que son dos libros muy importantes y de lectura, igual obligado es decir mucho, pero obligado, que son El horizonte comunista y Multitud y partido. Son dos libros que, para quien no sepa, son de referencia en castellano y por tanto era imprescindible, me parece, hacer énfasis de entrada, además de darles las gracias. Y como ya hemos abierto fuego también con las preguntas, yo pensaba que el ambiente estaría más frío, pero bueno, como hemos ido tan rápido, pues fenomenal. Primera pregunta, primera respuesta.
Okay, so the first question. So the first question was the one from over here, right? Yeah. So the relation between comrade and non-comrade, let's just call it open and undetermined. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of relations that they could be, right? So let's say my sister is not my comrade. I'm not going to kill her. I don't have any. It's just we're not in political relation with each other. We still, interact as family members and can have a friendly relation. So it's part of a general field that is open, right? There's not a specific kind of binary that is comrade, non-comrade in that way. Now, we can there are also things that when comradeship ends, and there can be former comrades, and I think we can say pretty safely that some parties historically had a problem dealing with that and did not interact very well with non-comrades and often killed them. But that's only one of many other possible options to do with former comrades. So I think the thing to keep in mind is how open the non-comrade is. And it can include allies, right? There are people that we might want to be allied with for some kinds of struggles, but we're still not on the same side. Allyship designates a relation among those who are pursuing their own agenda, but feel like it's good to combine. But they're not on the same. They're not really on the same side. It's just an overlapping for a time. So one of the things that's so weird about U.S. anti-communism is that everybody anti-communists turn everything into Stalin, but during the Stalin years, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were allies. No one would have ever called them comrades. Now on the vertical scale. I think that I want to distinguish forms of national feeling from comradeship, but I have the sense that when national belonging is at stake in a political struggle, that there are and there's a political struggle around it that have now become sides. That people on a national side might use terms like comrade for each other. But here that fits again with they are on the same side, and comrade is a mode of address for those being on the same side. What I would want to push, though, is the problem that comes in with giving it a national inflection because of the problem that not anybody could be a comrade. And then this might be an opportunity then for opening up the notion of the nation that's at stake. So there could be sort of, let's say, socialist versus fascist understanding of the nation there. But it would have to do some work. But I think that we should be a little bit hesitant with a first pass through a national use of comrade because it doesn't fit the criterion of anybody can be a member, just not everybody.
¿Preguntas o comentarios?
You want to assemble some?
Okay. Do you think that it's possible to think the camarada without a utopical horizon, without a utopical political horizon?
Are you going to one at a time, or are you going to collect?
Podemos sumar 2, 3, ¿no? Quizá mejor. Sí.
Okay,
Vamos a sumar dos intervenciones, y así quizás sea posible sintetizar las respuestas. Porque tenemos más intervenciones de las que pensaba. Había por aquí antes, aquí. Aquí. Y una por acá y otra por allá. Dos más.
Thank you very much, Jodi. That was really very exciting, and thank you for unraveling the specificity of this figure of the comrade as both a mode of address, but more significantly as a politics of relationality. I wonder to what extent you think we can historicize this figure. And I'm taking my cue here from Obama's joke, and this, you don't distantiate yourself from your comrade. How can we historicize this figure, taking into account that the history of the left is very much a history of divisions and disruptions of this comradeship? So can we actually think further about a new figure, which would be, the former comrade, and how would that work in this genealogy that you laid out for us?
Una más. A ver, manos por ahí que no veo bien.
Thank you very much for your interesting thoughts on the concept over here. Just look at the pillar next to it. Okay, on comradeship, and I think it's very important to intellectually also reconceptualize the whole concept and to make the distinctions that you make. The problem that I find for the practicality also within just like socio-political practice of the term itself is imbued in all you have actually presented there. For example, in German, Kameradschaft has a deeply narcissistic, fascist connotation. Also the pejorative meaning, for example, in the North American context. So do you find any, or do you see any alternatives to actually approach the same concept, but with a different terminology, just like to make it also practicable, not just like within intellectual life and as a term to actually here battle within academia, but also to bring it into the practice?
Maybe do these three?
Yo diría que sí.
So the first question was, is it possible to think or talk about the comrade without a political horizon? Yes, it's possible. I just don't want to do that. I mean, I want to think about it politically. So why is it possible? Actually, there's bunches of novels and books that talk about people in the military as comrade relations. And mostly these are like novels, like, I don't know, one called Three Comrades, and various other ones were just the relations among soldiers. And the thing is they don't really, it's usually just the kind of closeness or sort of more like a brotherhood of struggle there, but none of the politics comes out. So people can do it, but I just don't think it would be that exciting to do. I'd rather insert it as a differentiating factor. On historicizing the figure, I kind of feel like what I'm doing is a combination of looking at historical instances and finding within them forms of continuity, right? Discerning the form out of specific enactments. And it's interesting to think about like you said, the left is a history of division and disruption. For much of the Russian revolutionary period, we always think of Bolsheviks and Mensheviks as, really divided and against each other, but they still called each other comrade, which is really kind of surprising but interesting. This is going to be a book, and one of the chapters is going to look at, I think it's going to look at the end of comradeship. Right? I heard this, I think it's apocryphal because I can't trace it. Someone said, oh yes, it's just like that famous time when Rosa Luxemburg said to Edward Bernstein, "You are not my comrade." I'm like, I've looked for this everywhere, right? I can't find any written down record that this happened. But that end of comradeship, I think, is a point that, to think about, and I plan on doing that. But we also have to recognize that will only be a useful exercise if we've already accepted the utopian, egalitarian, emancipatory promise of comradeship as a form of political relation between those on the same side. And that's what I want to convince everyone of. And I think it's completely practical. In lots of lefts, contemporary lefts, people still say comrades. Many anarchist groups refer to each other as comrades. Socialists in the U.S., we call each other comrades. So the comrade is not just, even in as horrible a place as North America, it's not the case that the term only appears in its right-wing version. So I think that part is good. And there's the sense of the sense like politically we are something. We know each other by that name, by that term. Hearing it gives that little bit of an extra charge, and I think that's super useful and a lot better than making up some new name, like a brand. So I would rather keep this term that has so much promise in it. On the map, the kind of left that's really liberals, the term is ally and allyship, and it's deeply fraught and really a site more of essentially mutual distrust and beating each other up than it is actually allyship.
Bueno, gracias por la conferencia, pero yo quisiera hacer una pregunta que para mí es muy importante, pero que en realidad es muy sencilla. Pero antes haré un pequeño paralelismo. En la Grecia clásica la palabra arquitectura no se conocía, pero todos decimos que el Partenón, perdón, es arquitectura. Yo quiero preguntar una cosa muy sencilla. ¿Cuándo aparece escrita la primera vez la palabra camarada? ¿Qué sabemos de sus orígenes filológicos? ¿Se compone de dos vocablos? ¿Es un solo vocablo? Yo recuerdo, por ejemplo, que en Los Miserables de Víctor Hugo se utiliza, pero no sé mucho más.
The etymologies that I've read for comrade are, which surprised me, they are not come from breaking bread. It's from its Romance languages, either 15th or 16th century French and Spanish is when you first start to see it, and it's those traveling together. It comes from from travelers and those who are traveling along this, in the same. Going the same path, taking the same road. There's an interesting debate in Russian about the origins of tovarish. In the 90s, you could even say that there was renewed class struggle fought through etymologies, because the kind of people in favor of the becoming capitalist of Russia emphasized that tovarish comes from the word tovar, which is a good made for sale. And the cynical implication was, underneath the comrade, there's always someone who can be bought if the price is right. And so it was deeply cynical. But then others who wanted to hold on to a more collectivist understanding said no. Tovar comes from a Russian word, I think it's like tvir or something, that refers to a military soldiers in an old military camp. And so it had that military connotation, not one of goods. What I find interesting, even in that etymological struggle, is how in both cases, the comrade is generic, replaceable, and that's one of the things that I want to bring out about it, right? It can be any old thing, and it has another end. It's made for use.
Aquí y después allá.
Vale. Hola, Jodi. Yo formo parte de un movimiento político europeo que se llama aquí, Diem 25, de Yanis Varoufakis y demás, y al estar en contacto con gente de izquierda de toda Europa, pues ha pasado un poco como decía la compañera aquí, o camarada, que decía aquí, que estamos divididos y demás. Entonces me di cuenta que el mayor debate, desgraciadamente, que hubo en uno de los hilos grandes que había por correo electrónico, era sobre precisamente la palabra camarada. Y me di cuenta que en unos sitios significaba una cosa, en otros países, en Alemania, en otros países significaba, en los Balcanes significaba otra totalmente diferente. Entonces la pregunta es doble, y una es que le ha hecho un compañero antes. Decía que yo buscaba una alternativa a esta palabra, porque tiene mucho peso, diríamos que es como la clase obrera, diríamos son términos que están muy machacados por los medios de comunicación. Eso por un lado, si hay una alternativa a esa palabra que tú recomiendes usar, y por otro lado, si es que en algún país esta definición que tú has puesto de las tesis estas, si es que en algún país de verdad se sigue usando con esa pureza de la palabra, porque en todos los sitios tiene una carga muy grande, en todos los países, de un lado o de otro, pero yo no creo que en ningún sitio la palabra camarada la usen de verdad de forma como compañero, como igual, como hermano, como... Quiero decir, ¿hay algún país que tú sepas o en qué contexto se usa en ese sentido?
Una segunda por aquí.
Hola. Ahora pienso que el micrófono no es mi camarada porque siempre me pongo muy nerviosa. Esa frase que me gusta tanto de nuestras herramientas en nuestras manos. Yo quería más que preguntar, compartir algo, porque escuchándote me has hecho pensar mucho en una conversación, en un libro que se llama The Company We Keep o The Company She Keeps, de Céline Condorelli, en conversación con Avery. Me sabe fatal no recordar su nombre. Y ellas dos hablan de befriending issues, cuando la amistad, a pesar de tener vínculo emocional, está fundamentada ideológicamente. Y entonces ellas hacen este vínculo que, escuchándote, entendía que ambas estaban hablando de la camaradería, casi es más fácil en inglés, Y se me ocurría, no sé, pensando, quizás desde una perspectiva feminista, cuando escucho la palabra camarada, me viene algo patriarcal en el aspecto de que ahí está eliminación consciente de los sentimientos, ¿no? Entonces, en el repolitizar la amistad desde el befriending issues, de hecho, Condorelli y Avery pues hablan de muchos movimientos de mujeres que se van uniendo a lo largo del tiempo y a través de la amistad y de una relación cercana, que entiendo que igual es más esa camaradería de un mundo atomizado, es decir, no puedes estar en todas las luchas, ya hay como tantas. Entonces entiendo que la camaradería del internacionalismo comunista está un poco... Bueno, me pone nervioso el micrófono, a ver si nos hacemos amigos. Y no sé, o sea, escuchándote simplemente reflexionaba, ¿no? Ya la amistad admite el vínculo emocional y también entiendo, te quería preguntar cómo se rompe la camaradería. Todos sabemos más o menos cómo se puede romper una amistad, pero entiendo que este término que está tan de moda, que es la interseccionalidad, ¿no? Que puede ser camarada y amigo y aparte tener vínculos de sangre y se dan como todas, bueno, se dan muchas redes emocionales y es difícil como mantener esta camaradería neutra y limpia, ¿no? De compartimos, estamos del mismo lado. De hecho, otra cosa interesante de Condorelli y Avery es que hablan de romper con la amistad, ellas llaman patriarcal, de amigos y enemigos, ¿no? De estar tomando lados, entendemos que la amistad tienes que defender a tu amigo, aunque ideológicamente estés en contra, cosa que yo no comparto, y ya está.
I just had two questions, or were there?
Yes, two questions.
Just two, okay. So, my argument is for the term comrade. I'm not interested in forming another term. I think colleague sounds like neoliberals, and it's about everything is just, working for somebody else's profit. There's no kind of solidarity or anything other than, I'm stuck in a freaking office. So I don't, I'm not going to recommend another term. I'm making the strong case for comrade. And the thing is like in German, they figured it out. They just use another term, Genossen, right? In Italian, what is it, Campagna. So there are ways around the literal Russian Tovarish. So I think we've got a term, and that is and I think we should own the history and want the history and let that be part of it, and an inspiring part, and we've learned lessons part too. There was, I think, maybe something on that. I was confused with the translation, so I'm not sure exactly what was happening. But my argument was that comradeship is not the same as a relation between friends or a relationship of kinship. And that, you can see, let's say, just for example, speeches or letters from Lenin. And Lenin will say things like, to friends and comrades. Or you can see like a socialist like Eugene Debs, who will write when he's doing a speech, he might be, particularly to unions, he might say to brothers and comrades. Or the Black Panthers, they will say brothers, sisters, and comrades. I think that folks do this because they're not synonyms. Each one tells us a little bit something a little bit different about the kinds of relations that are there. And so I'm not sure if I answered the question that you had, or if there was something else that you were, yeah, okay. On the feminist arguments, which are super interesting and great. So first, comradeship doesn't eliminate feelings. It emphasizes a different set of affects and feelings: courage, confidence, enthusiasm, and solidarity, right? And those are important political affects, political feelings. I know affects and feelings aren't the same. We can do that later. But it mobilizes a set of feelings and affects that are important for political struggle, and that that I think too often get omitted, as if there were only as if our repertoire of feelings were only those from a small version of romantic love or a domestic sphere, or if our range of feelings were limited by negative feelings of outrage and anger or something. And so I think there's another set of affects that comradeship brings out that's important. Typically, comradeship ends up breaking over a political line, right? Whether or not an action or set of choices is in keeping with the political line or not. And the thing is, it kind of makes sense if you think, well, we're all on the same side. We comrades were on the same side, and now it looks like some of us are going in a direction that the rest of us can't go. We're not on the same side at that point. And so our comradeship breaks. But it doesn't mean we have to hate each other. We might just say, okay, you guys do your thing and we're going to do our thing over here for now. Maybe we come back later, maybe we don't. I want to use an example from the Communist Party of the United States in the 1920s. I think it was either 1929 or 1930. There was a trial, a party trial in Harlem. And the Communist Party at the time was really working hard to basically organize African Americans and make it very clear that the Communist Party was against white supremacy and was going to be very committed to the struggle against lynching. And so a white Finnish communist was on trial in Harlem, a party trial. It wasn't legal, it was a party trial. And over 1,000 people attended this trial. And he was on trial for racism. He had barred 3 black guys from coming into a party at their social center, at the Finnish Workers' Social Center. And so the party now puts him on trial for, race chauvinism, and for, not following the party line on the race question. And they give these great speeches where the party people basically showing that by denying entrance to these 3 black men, he was essentially on the side of the lynchers. That was basically no different than if he were lynching people. So they vote to expel him from the party, but they also say, we'll only expel you for 6 months. You can come back if you sell the paper of the African Blood Brotherhood, the Crusader, if you participate in better work with our black comrades, right? And if you really understand what you've done and want to be better. So they let him back in. But weirdly, before that can happen, he gets deported, and the Communist Party then leads the lawyers to try to fight his deportation. So he becomes not a comrade for a while, but they give him an option to come back. And then in another struggle, even though he's not officially their comrade, they still act towards him in a solidary way. So I like this example because it gives us this kind of nuance of what it might mean to be, that non-comradeship doesn't have to, it's not the same as a friend-enemy where, the antagonism is so great it can go to death. It's something different.
Muy bien. Son menos cuarto. ¿Algo que comentar sobre el término castellano compañero, compañera? Porque antes te has referido al compaño, compaña italiano. ¿Sería para ti un equivalente a camarada?
Can you say it one more time?
Sí, he pedido la traducción a medias. ¿Algo que comentar sobre el término castellano compañero, compañera? ¿Para ti sería un equivalente o sinónimo a camarada?
I don't know for sure because I don't speak Spanish, but my understanding is that in the uses on the left, it's a synonym. But maybe you guys could teach me whether or not that's correct or not. I mean, I thought it was a synonym. But I've also heard that in French, that that there was a change, and that after basically as the French left fell apart, and most people had an antagonistic relationship to the French Communist Party, that campa became this kind of intermediary term, which was not as strong as comrade because that had a bad association, but also because people didn't want to assert something such as a strong political form. And so it has this sort of more fluid, it's a little more than friends, but there's not a whole lot of political commitment entailed. And so I'm not sure how that works in Spanish, but I'd really love to learn that while I'm here.
Estaría bien pensarlo.
Can you tell me? Or?
Okay. Propongo pensarlo. ¿Una más? Perdón, es que vamos mal de tiempo, pero venga, sí, una cortita. ¿Sí? Venga, una más.
¿Puedo?
Sí, sí.
Bueno, disculpe porque soy italiano. En italiano, I try in English, my bad English, okay? Then, in Italy, we say compagno, and that becomes, from Latin, like cum panis, is the person with you break your bread. And that is real different. Like camarada is fascist, and is the person, the roommate, the person with the struggle divide the same room before the war. Then I prefer in all Europe we call compañero, les copains en français. I ask you if in English, etymologically, you have something analogic. I can something same of compañero or compagno or copain. Material culture is not war culture, you know.
The companion in English doesn't have any kind of political valence at all. It usually has something that is, it can be, it can suggest something like a love relationship, like someone you might live with, and you might be married, you might not be married. But it can also be a little bit looser. But it has very much a connotation of private sphere relations, intimate relations, but not. There's no political. So we don't have something like campaña. No politics there.
No, bueno, sí, ya, sí.
Hola.
Ahora sí la última, No nos vaya mucho el tiempo.
No, era solo por el tema de compañero, que yo creo que no tiene la connotación política y a lo mejor estaría más cerca de colega.
No estoy tan seguro. De hecho, yo proponía solo reflexionarlo para no irnos muy lejos, pero en realidad mi comentario era muy en la línea del compañero italiano. Yo creo que justamente compañero tiene esa ambivalencia que Jodi plantea entre el compañero en inglés y el camarada en inglés. En realidad, compañero es una palabra ambivalente, vale tanto para aludir justamente a la esfera de las relaciones privadas, como también es una palabra, según qué tradiciones, según qué momentos históricos, políticamente tan fuerte como camarada, yo diría. Pero, solo por pensar. Gracias. Digo, también como había alguien que planteaba o que pedía una alternativa, pues, bueno, por dejarlo caer. Pues, camarada Jodi Dean, muchísimas gracias por tu intervención. Descansamos 10 minutitos y a las 13 empezamos con la intervención de Cristina Kier.